Here we go. Okay. I wanted to offer a little further commentary about my my thoughts on the OSG system and how that is, I guess, being received in on the blog and stuff like that. I have one chap, Old Cat, who has obviously played lots and lots of games and super experienced at OCS and a lot of these other titles that I'm just starting to, just knocked a whole bunch of pieces, that I'm just starting to explore. And, and he was kind of questioning my, I'm kind of tired this morning. He's questioning my end result or thoughts on what I was playing. And particularly with this OSG and how I came to the conclusion about my like for the day system and my less than enthusiastic appreciation for the NLB system. And while they're close in concept, obviously the rules are very similar, which I think is part of the problem. The scales are very different. So the day system is 1,600 meters or thereabouts a hex, so 1.5 kilometers. And the NLB system's 480, so let's call it 500 meters a hex, right? And so that's 3 times the difference in size. There's that. There's the time scale, which is different. It's an hour versus 20 minutes. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. I'm thinking of a different game. It's portions of a day, so morning, midday, afternoon, and evening, right? And then there's then it's hourly turns for NLB, I believe. And the unit scale is typically, I think the day system is mainly brigades and battalions of artillery and stuff like that. And then the NLB obviously is more tactical, so it's at the regimental level. And from what I've seen of, and I only have a couple of Napoleonic history books, so I don't have a library of 40 or 50 books like this new chap I'm hanging out with at the moment's got probably 100 books on the Napoleonic era and the different leaders and the different things they do and how they did it and all that. So I'm sure there's a lot more detail that I can absorb and learn other than what I've read in the web and read out of various, handful of books I've read. Where I'm reading. So when I look at battalions formed up into regiments, and then those, so let's call that the battalion 600 men or something like that. So let's call that 2,000 or 2,500 or thereabouts men. When I see, in my mind's eye, when I see 2,000 men marching across a field with a whole bunch of other guys in that same space, that same hex, maybe there's, in the stacking rules, there's, I think, 3. And I wish I hadn't sold all of my NLB titles now because I could talk through these rules a little bit more knowledgeably. But you can imagine there's 3 regiments in a hex and maybe another unit, some artillery, some horse artillery, or some cavalry and a leader and all that. So when I see that force, that mass of units, and each regiment's taking up, I've got like a 200-man front, and they're 3 ranks deep or whatever it is, or maybe they're a French column and it's a narrower front, and they're all marching up and doing their thing. And then there's defensive lines with 2 or 3 deep, and there has to be some value to flanking, and there has to be some value in the game system at that tactical level to appropriate levels of fire and melee and how all those things happen. And I don't mind that all being combined into one thing, but I do mind flanking and all that sort of stuff not being considered at that scale. At the day scale, at 1,600 meters, sure, I can see that you veer off one hex and you can come in and put a zone of control around the rear of a unit and prevent it from retreating, which would allow it then to not be able to roll for this recovery business that goes on in the game. But I don't see that working in a 480, 500 meter hex concept where the only way I can really eliminate units, is by having a unit behind it or on its flank, admittedly, but typically behind it to prevent it from retreating. Otherwise, it's never gonna be eliminated. They're gonna retreat, because you can roll a die, and even if it says defender eliminate, you roll a die, and if there was a place for it to retreat, it gets to retreat. So you have this constant: they retreat, you attack, they retreat, you attack, they retreat, you attack, they retreat. And there's no losses occurring. There's no stragglers being created. There's no breakdowns of units, so that regiment becomes a weakened regiment. There's none of that there for me in that game. So I still feel, in all of the Napoleonic tactical systems that I've played so far, I'm feeling that there's not an appreciation for my understanding of how the tactics will work in a game, or should be represented in a game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's why I'm going to try, this Televira thing. But I feel like this is at the other end of the spectrum, in that it's going to be a laborious effort with a lot of this, volley fire and stuff like that, and the melee and all the rest of it will be fine, but it'll take some time to get through that to get to a result. Had a telephone call interruption there, so let me try and regroup on my thoughts on where I was. So then there was someone said, "Oh, hey, look, what's the, it'd be like I'm making the wrong comparison, like saying that OCS plays well at the 5 mile per hex and not well at 2.5 miles per hex." That's true, but the OCS combat system and all the other mechanics that go around it are structured such that the combat works at both scales. Whereas here, combat doesn't work at both scales, because there's all these other things, fundamental things for me, that I think are just game rules designed for divisions being applied at a battalion or regimental level, and it doesn't translate for me now. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm not playing the frigging game again, so I'm done with it. I'm good. But I do want to be clear about why I'm going through this whole exercise. I am trying to find a system that I feel good with, that has more than 2 or 3 titles, that I can explore and play some Napoleonic era battles. And if I can't find something in the Napoleonic era, then I'll look at something a little earlier or something a little later, and we'll see what happens. I'm not necessarily inclined to find the most complex, detailed, analytical, number crunching, rules minutia bullshit game. That's not what it's about. And I think sometimes people get caught up in the fact that this game or game system has to be fantastic because of all the minutia that goes into it. If that's what you like, that's awesome. That's not what I want. I want a game that I can pick up, learn the system, and play it without having to grind my ass down to the bone, right? It's one of the reasons why the tactical combat system, the platoon level stuff from the game is, I'm kind of about it. I really enjoy the planning and thinking about those games, but I don't enjoy the long grinding minutia of the attrition-based combat system for that game. You have to really choose the scenario you're going to play and the period of time you want to play it for that. Otherwise, it becomes a grind. It becomes predictable. You know what's going to happen, but you've got to go through the next 42 freaking turns just to get to the result that you knew was going to happen. So, I think that in the Napoleonic era, there's a lot of opportunity for game designers to come up with a system and a scale that matches unit size terrain, hex size, and time, and put a set of rules around that makes it thematically and historically engaging without it being a grind or too abstracted. I think there's a happy middle ground there, and I'm sure that someone will come up with something. And I know there's a lot of little one-off systems out there that you can try and you can play and things like that. I'm not as interested in those because it's one-off, right? I really have enjoyed the Days system because it's 3 or 4 titles. They all seem to play basically the same way, and there's a few little special rules for each one, which is nice. And it gives me the feel of the operational scale tactics of the time. It really helped me actually understand more about the operational art of war and its evolution and movement from classical strategy to operational strategy than, you know, probably any other title I've played so far, along with some, you know, good textbooks that help me see what went on historically and help me put all that together. So anyway, I'm going to grab this little piece of video and attach it to the one that was disconnected from the telephone call, and we'll pop it up. So that's not the entire summation of my issues with the NLB segment of Kevin Zucker's, you know, body of work, but it's enough to say, look, it's a combination of various elements within the game system that are causing me to have this lack of ability to believe I'm playing a Napoleonics era game or using anything that would approximate the tactics of the time. But I do feel that the CRT and the rules system and everything else is very applicable at that brigade level and divisional level, and it works just fine there. I can suspend my disbelief there. I can't suspend my disbelief down at that 480 meters regimental level, you know, hour-long turns. There's a disconnect for me. Same set of rules, literally the same set of rules does not apply. It should be different. Now, there are some tweaks that have been made, but it's not enough for me. Anyway, later.